So a little bit about DataOps. So typically when we think about data-intensive applications or machine learning applications, a lot of the core code has to be accompanied by a lot of the code around it to actually maintain it and deploy it into production. So this is a very popular reference to this concept paper that was released by Google. And this is even more so important now as data engineers and as machine learning engineers, we're actually turning a lot of the things that we're making into services. So people are no longer just updating a database anymore. They're actually deploying their databases as services, and they're actually making REST requests to those services. And so when we think about a service, we have to think about all of the things that services requires, right? This is very much outlined by things like the Iceberg REST catalog, which is a lakehouse solution, as well as the Model Context Protocol, which is, again, a server-based solution. All of a sudden, we're reinventing things that have already existed. And this is where I think DevOps kind of has to come back into the circle. And whenever we think about these things too, we have to think, okay, if we're having all these services, how are we deploying them? Are we deploying them on Kubernetes? How are we maintaining them? Except it's way more complicated because data applications are not just normal applications. They have a ton of state, and lineage in data matters. So the previous version of a data application or a database is completely different and there's a lot of implication if you get it wrong compared to the freshest or the most recent version. And there's a lot of things that can break because there's so many other end users that are varied, such as a data analyst, a data consumer, an application user, an application consumer. And so how do we introduce all of these domains back into data engineering? And I'm a data engineer by trade, which is why I'm using the term data engineer. But we've done something weird in data engineering, which is that we have recreated everything from scratch without consulting any of the DevOps folks. That's something that's weird. And you can kind of see it with all of the landscapes that are out. So this is the most recent Data 3.0 landscape for only the lakehouse. So this is not the MAD AI ML landscape. But you can see that a ton of these tools probably look familiar to data engineers, not so much for DevOps engineers, which is bad because a lot of this is probably going to be hitting your lap eventually. Especially if you're going to be expected to maintain it over long periods of time. Hence why I started the DataOps Initiative with the CD Foundation. So I don't have to explain the CD Foundation, hopefully, to this crowd too much. But a lot of the projects that have come through the CD Foundation have been mostly within the interoperability realm of CI/CD, which makes sense, but we don't really think of these tools as being super strong in the AI, ML, and data worlds, right? But we're still using these, they're still around, so why aren't we doing that? This also includes the same for our end users. Instead, what we're seeing is two completely different stacks, converge in parallel, or diverge in parallel, one for data engineering, one for AI ML, and then one for DevOps and traditional software applications, which in my opinion doesn't really make sense. That's weird. And so I started the DataOps Initiative with the CD Foundation, embedded it within the DevOps community so that we can teach the DevOps community lingo. What is data engineering? What is a data pipeline? What are the components of a lakehouse? What are we talking about when we talk about data mesh and data assets? But also extending it into MLOps as well. So a lot of the stuff that eBay talked about, really cool, but we have to learn how to do it too, right? And so some of the stuff that we cover as part of like the domain of the DataOps Initiative includes the platform engineering behind data platforms, the operations. So some really notable things here are data contracts, which FYI, just a normal API contract with a schema. Nothing really crazy, but nobody knows that for some reason, including data engineers. Again, we've reinvented things that already exist. Data quality control, data observability, things that are literally things that we know just with the word data in front of them. But for some reason, we've brought all of our own tooling to it that are not as performant for some reason. So why bring this into the continuous delivery fold versus say CNCF or some other organization? And generally speaking, I want to bring CI/CD developers and DevOps engineers into the fold early on as we're really booming through these different versions of data architecture and AI ML. This is something that's really important and really facilitate the interoperability between these tools. So a lot of data engineers are learning Terraform for the first time and their mind is blown that something like Terraform exists, which is crazy to me because Terraform is not new. But this is something that's really important because these are the engineers who are just randomly deploying applications on Kubernetes and then just kind of thinking that they know how to maintain it. They don't, and they don't want to learn how to maintain it. And so let's also keep DevOps very relevant to this conversation as we move into the next stage of this. So one of the questions that I asked our contributors when we first started the DataOps Initiative, and this is part of our onboarding process, is what kind of things are you interested in contributing to but also learning about? And so I've color-coded this based on several domains, and you can see that in the orange is pipeline orchestration, CI/CD for data pipelines, and working with cloud-native data, which is really cool stuff, and I'm really excited to see that because I feel like that area is getting more mature these days, but also traditionally in the CI/CD house. And then the green part is actually quite interesting because I associate that a little bit more with traditional data engineering within that data domain. So data contracts, not a super well-known term, but again, the same thing as a API contract. Does schema A match schema B? If so, yes, go. And data governance, which is metadata management as well. Hence, why we're going to hit a bunch of lawsuits in 5 years when we realize MCP was not secure all along, and we have a really hard time managing those assets, as well as data quality, which has always been a really big struggle. But arguably, data engineers are actually more driven by data quality issues and solutions than anything else. In the blue, we have more of the MLOps type stuff, so things like model monitoring, how do we manage drift, how do we actually do real-time ML. These are things that, again, are really important. Security, of course, in the pink, and then strategy and organizational data ops, which is surprisingly kind of the smallest representation. So currently, we have several core contributors who are all super stacked, and we have meetings bi-monthly, bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. That's what the cadence is. And you're welcome to join and join in on some of these. We've done some really cool things like workshops. So I have a Fundamentals of Data Ops workshop that is available on YouTube. It's an hour and a half, so it's juicy. But we've also done some really cool things like evaluate different tools like MCP and A2A. How do we, what is the stack for this? How's Kafka being used? What's the story there? And figuring out, okay, how does this actually work from an end user perspective? We're also working on a landscape so that we can bring this tooling in and then embed it within the current CD landscape, which is really exciting. So eventually, ideally, you'll see a little DataOps tab there in the corner. And to the left of that is a little sneak peek of some of the things that we'll look at. And we want really tried and tested tools that we know are easily recommendable. We're also working on a book resource. So this is a book that's hosted in Markdown that you can deploy anywhere and that you can host. And some of the things that we're going to cover, again, are sort of like platforming, operations, and AI/ML, really from this idea of you're smart, but you don't know the lingo, which is something that's really cool. So again, top-down view of the things that we've done within this last year or so is really getting started on a lot of these projects, and we eventually do want to work our way towards potentially having a certification, just like an official source for data ops that DevOps engineers can lean into, but also data engineers who want to actually make their work reproducible. We also have open blog posts that people can write, workshops, and things like that. I implore you, if you are interested, to go to the website cd.foundation/dataops if you want to learn more, or scan the QR code and join. If you want to write a blog, if you want to do some sort of guest thing, it's a community thing. So, share your expertise, because I don't know it all. And yeah, I think that's good for time. Cool.